the middle of a world obsessed with going electric, one man quietly built an engine that could destroy everything we thought we knew. No PR campaign, no countdown, just raw mechanical brilliance. And a statement that's now haunting boardrooms across Tesla, Ford, and even Ferrari. While the rest of the world raced to plug in, Christian von Koenigsegg unplugged from the script and built something they said was impossible. So why is the EV industry panicking? What makes this one engine more terrifying than 1,000 Teslas? And how did a quiet Swedish inventor outplay the entire global auto market? Stick around, because this story doesn't end with horsepower. What's happening? Christian von Koenigsegg doesn't look like a disruptor. He doesn't speak in headlines. He rarely raises his voice. But behind that soft-spoken demeanor is a mind that has quietly haunted the world's most powerful car companies for over 2 decades. He's part inventor, part philosopher, and part madman. And to him, engineering isn't a business function. It's a sacred act. When other automakers debate supplier contracts and platform reuse, Christian is sketching combustion chamber flow dynamics on napkins during lunch. When a conventional team takes 3 years to greenlight a production prototype, Koenigsegg's team is building carbon fiber layups in-house, because no third-party supplier could match the precision Christian demands. Koenigsegg's engineering philosophy is rooted in total control, no outsourcing, no compromises. The engines, built in-house. The turbos, custom. Even the carbon fiber, yes, even that, is crafted using proprietary techniques developed inside a small facility in Ängelholm, Sweden. Why? Because perfection isn't a goal, it's a prerequisite. Christian is obsessed with the power-to-weight ratio, not because it sells, but because it speaks to him. He's fascinated by thermodynamics, not just as a science, but as a language. And unlike his rivals, he doesn't see combustion as outdated tech. He sees it as unfinished business. The industry builds for scale. Koenigsegg builds to shatter expectations. The goal was never to sell 1 million units. It was to ask the questions no one else dared to ask. Like, do we even need camshafts? Or, what happens if a car has no gearbox at all? It's no wonder Koenigsegg's early cars were dismissed as curiosities. The CC8S, the CCR, they were too radical, too different, too pure. But when the Agera RS broke the world speed record in 2017, hitting 277.9 miles per hour, it wasn't just fast, it was a message. We didn't follow the rules, and we still won. Christian doesn't build cars, he builds systems. He doesn't care about market segments. He cares about thermodynamic efficiency, acoustic balance, and structural harmony. He once said, "We build fast cars because we can." But it wasn't ego, it was purpose. Because speed, to Christian, isn't recklessness. It's proof, and proof is what he built next. A proof of concept so insane, no one believed it until they sat inside it. The car that shouldn't exist, but does. The automotive world laughed when Koenigsegg announced the Gemera, a 4-seater hypercar with luggage space and cup holders. It sounded like satire until it didn't. Because the Gemera isn't a compromise, it's a dare. A 1,700 horsepower plug-in hybrid that accelerates like a missile, but carries groceries like a family sedan. On paper, it's the most contradictory car Koenigsegg has ever built. In reality, it's a design masterpiece. The heart of the Gemera is the TFG, Tiny Friendly Giant, a 2.0-liter, 3-cylinder engine that uses free valve technology. No camshafts, no belts. Every valve is individually controlled by software, allowing the engine to switch breathing modes mid-drive. It can shut down cylinders, change timing profiles on the fly, and deliver 600 horsepower on its own. Pair that with 3 electric motors, one on each rear wheel and one on the crankshaft, and you get performance numbers that rival full electric supercars. 0 to 60 in under 2 seconds, a combined output of up to 1,700 horsepower, and total range over 600 miles. But the numbers aren't what make the Gemera terrifying, it's the execution. The doors open like science fiction airlocks. The rear seats are actual bucket thrones. The cabin feels more like a minimalist Scandinavian lounge than a race-bred cockpit. It has wireless charging, USB ports, rear infotainment, and yes, actual cup holders. But here's the real trick. It doesn't drive like a boat. Despite its weight, the Gemera handles like a machine half its size. Active rear-wheel steering, torque vectoring, and carbon monocoque construction make it shockingly nimble. It drifts. It attacks corners. It dances. The Gemera was proof that Koenigsegg could blend madness with manners. A car for your family that could still annihilate a Bugatti. But nestled under its floor was a prototype system so advanced, it didn't just challenge supercars. It threatened the entire EV model. And that system would arrive in the form of a motor no bigger than a suitcase. This isn't marketing, it's mechanics. Subscribe for the real story, the carry-on motor that shook the industry. When Koenigsegg revealed the dark matter electric motor, it didn't come with a parade. It wasn't live-streamed to millions. There was no dance routine or hologram, just a quiet press release, a few murmurs from engineers, and a blurry photo of what looked like an oddly shaped lunchbox. But inside that box, the future was hiding. At first glance, the numbers seemed impossible. One electric motor, not two, not three, just one. It produced 800 horsepower and 1,250 newton-meters of torque, all from a unit small enough to fit inside a carry-on bag. No gimmicks, no reduction gear trickery, no software hallucinations, just raw, silent, terrifying performance. Koenigsegg had rewritten the rules of electric propulsion, and they'd done it without telling anyone they were even in the game. Most manufacturers rely on traditional three-phase motors. They're bulky, hot, and require multiple units to manage torque vectoring and power distribution. Tesla built an empire using those assumptions: dual motors, inverter tuning, and brute force power delivery. But the dark matter motor didn't follow that blueprint. It threw it out the window. Instead, Koenigsegg developed a six-phase radial axial flux architecture. That mouthful of engineering jargon isn't just for show. It's a fundamental shift in how electric motors move energy. By combining both radial and axial flux designs, dark matter spreads magnetic load more efficiently across a wider range of motion. That means less heat, more torque, and no wasted motion. In practical terms, it means this: Koenigsegg's motor doesn't lag, it doesn't fade, it doesn't overheat on back roads or bog down after a few launches. It delivers precise, relentless power, whether you're idling through a city or detonating out of a corner at full throttle. And it does all of this with fewer parts, lower cooling needs, and tighter packaging. And what they unveiled next didn't just bend the rules, it lit them on fire. Why, they resurrected the Monster V8. At a time when automakers were quietly phasing out combustion engines, Koenigsegg did the unthinkable. They brought the noise back, and not just any noise. The Hot V8 wasn't a watered-down tribute or a retro vanity project. It was a fire-breathing, 5.0-liter, twin-turbocharged monster, capable of delivering over 1,500 horsepower from the engine alone. Paired with the dark matter electric motor, that number exploded to a mind-melting 2,300 horsepower. And yet, Koenigsegg didn't put it in a stripped-out hypercar. They put it in the Gemera, a car with 4 bucket seats, a family car with cup holders. To understand how shocking that was, you have to understand the era Koenigsegg was launching it into. By the year 2025, the automotive world had gone silent, literally. Governments had ramped up zero-emission mandates, and most manufacturers were scrambling to deliver dull, software-heavy electric vehicles to meet compliance standards. The future was supposed to be quiet, smooth, and sensible, but Christian von Koenigsegg had other ideas. While everyone else embraced silence, he doubled down on sound. Deep, raw, mechanical sound. Koenigsegg's message was simple: electric is fast, but this is alive. They weren't rejecting the future, they were redefining it. The Hot V8 wasn't about emissions or range, it was about experience. Christian understood that driving isn't just a numbers game. It's emotional, it's visceral, it's about being part of something powerful and unpredictable. And in that moment, the Hot V8 wasn't just an engine, it was a statement, a defiant roar in a world trying to mute everything mechanical. And when it did, the industry's cleanest myth was the first thing to fall apart, the dirty secret behind the clean energy dream. It was supposed to be the perfect solution: silent, sleek, zero-emission electric vehicles, a cleaner, greener future. But beneath the surface of that dream lay a truth too inconvenient to market. Christian von Koenigsegg had spent years watching the electric revolution gain momentum. He didn't oppose it, he just understood it better than most. And what he saw wasn't a utopia, it was a trade-off. A dangerous one, because while electric vehicles reduce tailpipe emissions, the environmental cost of building them is staggering. Start with the batteries. The lithium, cobalt, and nickel needed to build high-capacity battery packs don't appear out of thin air. They come from massive open-pit mines, many in unstable regions, many using unethical labor. The extraction process destroys ecosystems, consumes millions of gallons of water, and leaves behind toxic waste. And that's before the batteries even reach the assembly line. Then there's the energy grid. In many countries, zero-emission EVs are still powered by coal-fired electricity. That means the environmental gains promised on paper aren't always realized in practice. Christian knew all of this, and while others turned away from the complexity, he embraced it, because he believed a truly sustainable future had to be smarter, not just cleaner. That's why Koenigsegg never went all in on batteries. Instead, they explored alternative paths, synthetic fuels that can be produced using renewable energy, biofuels that are carbon neutral across their life cycle, ultra-lightweight composites that reduce vehicle mass and energy consumption. They even redesigned components to maximize recyclability and minimize resource waste. And so, when Christian finally decided to unveil Koenigsegg's next big move, it wasn't about hype or headlines. It was about shifting the entire conversation. And the moment he made that decision, the industry split down the middle. The decision that split the industry in two. It wasn't announced on stage. It wasn't leaked through influencers. It came in a private meeting, small, focused, and final. Christian von Koenigsegg sat down with his engineering team in early 2025. After months of cryptic silence, testing, and quiet experimentation, he leaned forward and said the words that would ripple through the automotive world. "I've made my decision. We're building a new engine from scratch. Not a retrofit, not a scaled-down V8, a completely new combustion platform. Lightweight, compact, quad turbocharged, and fully designed to run on synthetic e-fuel." It was an act of defiance, but also one of pure logic. Christian didn't see it as turning away from the future. He saw it as fixing what others got wrong. While the rest of the industry viewed combustion as a relic, Koenigsegg viewed it as unfinished business. The engine they outlined was high-revving and ultra-responsive. Short-stroke design, a valve system with no camshafts, operating entirely through software. It was thermally efficient, brutally powerful, and surprisingly clean. On synthetic fuels, it could deliver near-zero emissions without the weight, complexity, and energy loss of battery packs. To Christian, this wasn't a protest, it was a pivot, a rational, precision-guided response to a future being built on shaky assumptions. The combustion engine wasn't outdated, it had simply been neglected. Koenigsegg intended to change that, but this wasn't just about building a better engine. While the rest of the industry was still building calculators, Koenigsegg was composing poetry. And if you're wondering why no one else can follow that path, well, they can't. And here's why. Why no one can copy Koenigsegg. If you were to walk into Koenigsegg's headquarters in Ängelholm, Sweden, you would not see a production line. You would see an invention lab masquerading as a car company. That is not branding. It is literal. They build their own carbon fiber. They 3D print their own titanium. They design engines not with supplier catalogs, but with curiosity and chalkboards. Koenigsegg's team doesn't work from parts. They work from first principles. That is why their vehicles behave so differently. Their carbon monocoques are stiffer, lighter, and safer than anything built on outsourced platforms. Their inverters and torque converters are custom crafted to work with their unique 6-phase electric motors. Even the aerodynamic components are developed with proprietary technology, often made to perform multiple roles at once: stabilization, cooling, drag reduction, all within a single panel. Nothing is wasted. Nothing is bloated. This kind of engineering is not scalable, and that is exactly the point. Christian von Koenigsegg has said before that he has no interest in becoming a mass producer. What he wants is mastery. Where most automakers want modularity and repeatability, Koenigsegg wants refinement and edge. That is why they build their own control software, their own gearless drive systems, and even their own infotainment hardware. When something doesn't exist that meets Christian's expectations, they don't wait, they invent it. The result is a company that can do what no one else can, not because they have more money, but because they are willing to do things that no one else dares. Outsourcing is cheaper, mass production is easier, partnerships are efficient, but all of that comes with compromise, and compromise is not in Koenigsegg's vocabulary. This isn't boutique, this isn't niche, this is what it looks like when obsession becomes infrastructure. And while other companies were trying to build what Koenigsegg had, Tesla was still trying to figure out what just hit them. But Koenigsegg's next move isn't even about Tesla. It is about something far more existential: the end of EVs as we know them. This is not a question most automakers are willing to ask. It is uncomfortable, dangerous, even blasphemous in an era where electrification has become a political and corporate certainty. But Christian von Koenigsegg does not deal in certainties. He deals in realities. And the reality is this: electric vehicles, as we know them, are brilliant in theory, but broken in practice. Yes, they are fast. Yes, they are quiet. Yes, they are cleaner than internal combustion. But that does not make them superior. It just makes them different. What Koenigsegg has demonstrated with the dark matter system, the TFG engine, and the hot V8 hybrid configuration is that electrification doesn't need to be total to be revolutionary. In fact, going all in on batteries may be the worst strategy of all, because emotion matters. Koenigsegg doesn't build cars for people who want to save the world. They build cars for people who want to feel it. Every time you drive one of their machines, you are part of an orchestra. Mechanical, electrical, and emotional. It isn't quiet, it isn't perfect, but it is alive. Electric vehicles, for all their strengths, are becoming indistinguishable. Silent cabins, instant acceleration, regenerative braking, drive-by-wire steering. Eventually, you cannot tell one from another. They become appliances. And people do not fall in love with appliances. They tolerate them. That's not what Koenigsegg is interested in. The company's latest hybrid systems have shown what is possible when electricity becomes a tool, not a doctrine. When used properly, it enhances combustion. It multiplies control. It delivers torque exactly when and where it's needed. But it doesn't replace sensation. It doesn't neuter the experience. It elevates it. Koenigsegg's approach is not anti-EV. It is post-EV. And if this is the direction they are going, then the electric revolution is not dead. It's just been dethroned. And the global ripple effect? That hadn't even begun yet. The day the EV industry flinched, it started with silence. Not applause, not hype, not another overproduced keynote with LED backdrops and a tech bro in a blazer. Just a low-resolution photo of an engine and a sentence. No live stream. No teaser, just one quote from Christian von Koenigsegg. This changes everything. And that was all it took to send shockwaves through the entire electric vehicle industry. At first, many dismissed it. A combustion engine? In 2025? In an age where even the word gasoline was being scrubbed from marketing decks. Surely this was just a nostalgic detour, a passion project for collectors. But then the numbers came out. Lightweight, modular, synthetic fuel capable, quad turbo, free valve, near zero emissions, and output that rivaled the dual motor setups of Tesla's most expensive models. Suddenly, the smirks disappeared. Automotive executives who had spent the last 5 years announcing the end of combustion found themselves in emergency meetings. Publicly, they tried to stay on message. The future is electric. The path is clear. The roadmap is set. But behind closed doors, they were scrambling. Engineers were asked to review Koenigsegg's design. Boardrooms were flooded with questions. Can we replicate this? Can we license the tech? How much would it cost us to pivot? The timing couldn't have been worse. Most legacy automakers had already invested billions into battery production, EV-only platforms, and public infrastructure partnerships. Their entire business models had become dependent on electric vehicle adoption accelerating, not slowing. Koenigsegg's engine wasn't just a technological marvel, it was a direct challenge to the foundation those companies had built. Even EV-first companies like Lucid and Rivian, which had relied on their futuristic brand image to attract capital and attention, felt the tremor. If a hybrid, even a hyper-hybrid like Koenigsegg's, could deliver more performance, more excitement, and more efficiency than a pure EV, what exactly were they offering anymore? Worse yet, Koenigsegg didn't try to spin it. They didn't market it as greener, or more sustainable, or climate-aligned. They simply said it worked. It was better. And that subtlety made it even more dangerous. There was no spin to attack, no hype to puncture. Just facts, just numbers, just physics. And for an industry addicted to press releases and stock-fueled buzz, that kind of quiet confidence was terrifying. Koenigsegg had not insulted the EV industry. They had simply outclassed it. And in doing so, they didn't just capture attention. They captured doubt. But behind the scenes, the real panic had already begun. Wall Street's billion-dollar mistake. For years, electric vehicle stocks had been propped up by one thing: inevitability. Investors didn't just believe in Tesla, Lucid, or NIO. They believed the future had already been decided. That regulation, consumer sentiment, and corporate compliance had locked the gas engine in a coffin, never to return. But when Koenigsegg unveiled their combustion-based hybrid, Wall Street saw something they weren't prepared for: an alternative. Not a nostalgic throwback, not a niche collector's item, a viable, superior, forward-facing alternative. That's when the questions started flooding into analyst desks. What does this mean for EV adoption timelines? Do hybrids re-enter the growth model? Is Tesla's pricing power in danger? In less than 72 hours, small dips started to ripple through EV stocks. Nothing major, nothing front page, but it was enough to get noticed, enough to break the illusion of permanence. And once that illusion cracked, Koenigsegg's little engine wasn't just a story, it was a market signal. Analysts who had spent the last 5 years adjusting valuations based on battery tech curves suddenly had to account for something else: internal combustion innovation. Even those who shrugged off Koenigsegg's engine as non-scalable were forced to acknowledge what it represented. If a tiny Swedish company could build something this efficient, what was stopping Porsche, Toyota, BMW? More importantly, how much longer could EV-first companies sustain their premium valuations. Without an innovation moat, Tesla, once considered unassailable, was suddenly vulnerable, not from below, but from the side. Not because someone made a cheaper EV, but because someone reminded the world that electric was not the only path forward. And it wasn't just Tesla. Every legacy automaker that had announced a full electric by 2030 plan started facing uncomfortable questions from investors. Is this still the best path? How expensive would it be to pivot again? What happens if consumer sentiment turns? No one was pulling out yet, but for the first time in a decade, investors weren't racing to buy the EV dream. They were stepping back, watching, waiting, and then the politicians started asking questions. Governments realized they bet on the wrong future. Across the world, governments echoed the same message: phase out combustion, promote electric vehicles, ban gas, offer subsidies, build chargers. Simple, absolute, and always framed as the only path forward. Koenigsegg's engine, clean burning, modular, and hybrid ready, complicated everything. Suddenly, lawmakers had to face a painful question. What if our entire policy structure was built on an assumption that is no longer true? Environmental regulators in the European Union began to reassess fleet emissions targets. If a hybrid with synthetic fuel could produce fewer life cycle emissions than an EV built with rare earth metals, should it still be penalized? In the United States, politicians who had spent years subsidizing EV adoption were briefed on Koenigsegg's powertrain. Quietly, some expressed concern. If consumers had access to cleaner combustion options that didn't require grid expansion or lithium mining, would they still need incentives to go electric? And then there were the infrastructure issues. Many municipalities had already sunk millions into charging networks. But what if the pace of EV adoption slowed? What if plug-in hybrids, not full electrics, became the preferred compromise? What if EV infrastructure turned into another stranded investment? The industry was moving again, but not in the direction regulators expected. And through it all, Christian says just one thing: this is only the beginning. The revolution that didn't follow the rules. There was no manifesto, no rallying cry, no viral campaign. Koenigsegg never positioned itself as a rebel, but somehow they won a war they never declared. Because while the rest of the industry chased trends, Koenigsegg chased truth. Truth in engineering, truth in physics, truth in what makes a machine feel alive. And that truth led them somewhere no one else dared to go, beyond the binary of electric or combustion. Their revolution was quiet, precision, not protest, innovation, not imitation. And now the automotive world has been forced to confront a reality it tried to ignore. Maybe electricity wasn't the answer. Maybe it was just a convenient story, a placeholder, a stepping stone. Because Koenigsegg didn't just build a faster car, they built a philosophy, a reminder that the soul of driving isn't found in range estimates or touchscreen interfaces. It's found in response, in sound, in connection, in the feeling that you, and not some algorithm, are in control. This wasn't a rejection of progress. It was the rebirth of it, a shift from tech obsession back to technical mastery. And that shift, no matter how quietly it began, is now impossible to ignore. So what do you think? Koenigsegg rewriting the rules, or just reminding us what we forgot? Drop a comment and let us know if you think this is the rebirth of combustion, or the final chapter of EV domination.